Good evening and welcome to Fine Point, where no narrative is sacred, no media hoax is safe, and we zero in on the big picture. I'm your host, Chanel Rion. Can you feel it in the wind? It's 1775. Again. The No Kings protests rolled out across the country this weekend, a self-declared uprising against President Trump that ended up looking more like a silver-haired street fair. News photos from Madison, Milwaukee, and Denver showed crowds dominated by older attendees, many wearing yellow paper crowns and retired tyranny buttons. There were some younger attendees with very passionate, well-thought-out, independent-minded reasons for showing up as well.
Trump's a bitch.
Yeah, why is that?
I don't know. We don't like him. That's the word around here.
Any particular reason why you don't like him?
No clue at all. I'm just going with everybody else saying.
Organizers claimed over 2,700 rallies in all 50 states, but turnout varied widely. In Wisconsin, about 20,000 filled the Capitol grounds. In small towns like Westcliff, Colorado, about 150 showed up. Labor giants like SEIU and the American Federation of Teachers provided logistics, permits, and outreach support. A sign that this wasn't just a grassroots flash mob, but a professionally staged political rollout, and maybe more. Financial disclosures show Home of the Brave, a new protest consortium, bought a $1 million national digital ad package to promote attendance. And the Drilldown investigation followed the money even further, identifying $294 million in funding flowing through networks tied to Arabella Advisors, Open Society, the Ford Foundation, Tides, Rockefeller, and Buffett-aligned grant makers. A second report from the same team outlined how these funds pay full-time organizers and content partners under tax-exempt civic engagement grants, making political outrage a career path. Our next guest is the Executive Director of Research at the Government Accountability Institute and author of the book Controligarchs. Seamus Bruner joins us now.
Chanel, great to be with you.
What a time. Talk to us about the funding here. You guys have been doing incredible work looking into what you guys call Riot, Inc. Expand on that after this weekend.
Yeah, so after this weekend, before the weekend, we saw the No Kings. We went to the partners page on its website. We wanted to see, is this actually grassroots? Spoiler alert, no, it is not. Of the roughly 200 organizations that are listed as official organizers or partners of the No Kings event, we crunched the numbers and found shocking amounts of money coming from the people you mentioned, Soros, Tides, Arabella-linked funds. And that's a ton of money. We crunched every 990. It was really the first full cash analysis of the No Kings protest. A lot of people have looked at just Soros. We figured why not bring in the other Soros-esque funds.
Right.
And not grassroots. These things cost tons of money, not to mention just like the salaries. The salaries are probably the biggest expenditure. You've got the $1 million ad package, you've got all of the signs and the water bottles and things for protesters, but then a lot of and I went to the No Kings in our town. There's a lot of people there who are clearly on the clock, wearing yellow vests, ACLU attorneys, people handing out things that are not volunteers. So it's a lot of money goes into the protest industrial complex.
Okay, so that was my next question. So if all this money is pouring into this effort, it's going to something. What is it going towards? So you mentioned water bottles and logistics and ads, and it also includes, I guess, salaries for people. Is it like hourly? Do they run want ads in Craigslist? How do they do this?
Well, so the organizations, so like I said, there's like roughly 200 that are listed on the website.
Okay.
They exist all year round. They've been around, some of them for decades.
Right.
ACLU, SEIU, et cetera. So it's not, the 294, a lot of people misunderstood. That didn't go into No Kings itself. It goes into the entire ecosystem of the protest industrial complex. So many of these organizations were involved in the Tesla takedown. They were involved in the hands-off or May Day demonstrations. There was a previous No Kings. Their full-time job is to be political activists, and so they get salaries. I would say there's a good number of lawyers who get paid. The bail funds for cities, most cities were sort of like you mentioned, silver hair street fairs, but Up in Portland, I mean, the unrest is still going on. They're still attacking the ICE facility up there. In Chicago, it gets more violent.
You were at the White House recently. We talked about this.
Yes.
And you were briefing the president on the scale of the attacks that were being rendered towards ICE agents. But I mean, how organized that was.
That's right. And so, I mean, we included in our analysis the fundraising platforms that go towards getting money to the decentralized groups, things like Antifa. And, there's other outfits, the John Brown Gun Club and others who participate who don't have LLCs or EIN numbers where they can receive big Soros bucks. So there's a couple of like GoFundMe style things, like something called Open Collective raises money for a lot of these groups that don't have their own, corporate accounts. And that got $2.9 million from the Arabella and Tides funding networks. So huge amounts of businesses in this whole system that are making large amounts of money. Lawyers cost a lot of money. The bail funds, getting these people back on the streets, that costs a lot of money.
Does that potentially explain the demographics we're noticing? And it's obviously it's not everybody, but I mean, we saw for the most part older people participating in these events. There's lots of jokes about the geriatrics are on the loose. Lots of grandkids didn't see their grandparents over the weekend. But a recent breakdown said that over 60% of No Kings attendees were over the age of 45. What does that tell you from a follow the money perspective?
Well, I don't think most of those people are paid. I don't think the people showing up are paid. Those people actually, the money pays to get them out, get them motivated. What are you going to, you give up your Saturday? All of the messaging that says you have to come out. Oh, everybody else is coming out. They're all going to be there. Most of the people are earnestly, looking to relive the glory days of the 60s, these older people. I don't know that they have grandkids maybe. They had kids who have chosen not to have children. So they're not paid. I mean, some of them. And then you have the other ones where, like clockwork, people all of a sudden at a certain time just turned around and left the rally and went home. So there is certainly, there's Rent-A-Crowd. There's several Rent-A-Crowd companies. There is some of that going on, but I think the people you see making their own signs, the handmade signs, not the glossy ones, those are people who just have nothing better to do on their Saturday than.
Some of the sound clips that we watched over the weekend included, and we played some of it in the intro, but the amount of, I guess, friendliness towards violence that could have erupted from all of this was pretty shocking. You had one guy with a megaphone basically saying we need to turn guns on federal agents, very similar to the patterns you guys were studying with regards to violence against ICE agents. How actually connected are those two groups, the No Kings and the anti-ICE protests?
Oh, I think that most of the people who showed up at No Kings are very much anti-ICE, and that's what a large amount of this money is going towards, is the messaging. And so it's very much an anti-ICE movement. They want open borders. I think, I saw some people might have seen the butterfly woman, the woman wearing the monarch costume, and she was talking about how borders should be open. We should have unlimited people. The Statue of Liberty says unlimited people coming in. And so it's all part of the kind of the left-wing ideology, is to have open borders, and then when Donald Trump deports a moderate number, not a huge number. It's not like the 10 million plus that Biden brought in. I think that's very much connected to this No Kings protest. And when you look at the funding network, Soros, Tides, the Arabella funding network, they spend an enormous amount of money bringing migrants in, resettling them. So they're really sort of protecting their business model. They're part of a whole different complex, the migrant resettlement complex.
And on that front, it actually ties to the U.S. taxpayer.
Yeah, absolutely. These groups, they get a lot of taxpayer funding, not necessarily the groups on the ground, but the Arabella funding network gets taxpayer money. Tides is a huge recipient of taxpayer money. The Soros Open Society Institutes get a lot of taxpayer money, less after USAID was shut down, but in years past, we're talking tens of millions of dollars.
I want to dive into that a little more. So we got to go to break real quick. So we'll go to break, and in the next segment, we'll talk about kind of the skeletal outlines of how basically we, the taxpayer, funded the No Kings rallies, which is an absurd idea, but I think there's a pretty straightforward line you guys have been uncovering. So we'll be right back. And we're back. We're back with Seamus Bruner from the Government Accountability Institute, where they've been doing a lot of deep diving into where the money comes from when it comes to these massive riots that we're watching across the country. And maybe massive is the wrong word, but they're massively funded. No Kings riots, anti-ICE riots. But it turns out the more Government Accountability Institute and the more you guys did research into this, turns out we the taxpayer are paying for this.
Yeah, absolutely, indirectly at least, and maybe even directly. I mean, when you follow the money, you see that it's quite simple. Taxpayers give money to open society institutes. They give money to the Rockefeller funds. They give money to the Tides funds, Tides Center. In fact, pretty much directly through Tides, we funded the Stop Cop City riot in Atlanta that saw over 60 demonstrators charged with things like domestic terrorism, RICO, assaulting police officers, really violent stuff. That was just straight line from Tides to the organizers of that. Network for Strong Communities is that entity. So that's direct money. We found over $100 million in taxpayer funds go into these big left-wing NGO funding networks, not just through USAID, which has been largely cut off, but they got a lot of Department of Education money. They have partnerships with schools where they're indoctrinating the youth, and then that money, of course, is fungible, so it frees up the money for the protest industrial complex.
Seamus, it begs the question, these are NGOs. They stand for non-government organizations, and yet the government is funding them. How does that work?
That's the business model. And so Rockefeller, this was in control oligarchs. I covered, they really pioneered, Rockefeller and Carnegie pioneered this model 100 years ago of getting the government to chip in, because they were much more, back in the day, and it sort of made sense because the private sector is much more efficient. Nobody could argue with the Rockefellers or Carnegie's efficiency, right. In extracting oil and producing energy. And so they set up the foundation really as a tax vehicle, but the government said, oh, you guys know so much about the things that you're doing. Why don't we chip in on things like medicine? The Rockefeller University began as a medical research institution, much better than the government was at doing that kind of research at the time. And they also proved that they were really good at food, solving starvation in foreign countries. Things that Bill Gates attempts to do today, not as well as they did back in the day. And so that's sort of how this NGO game got started. It's like the private sector is better, the government will just give them money to do something that the government could not do as effectively. But it has grown so out of control that fleecing the government is actually quite easy. You see it in every sector where they just say that they're doing things, but they don't really do things, and the government doesn't even have the resources to follow up, so that it just becomes this snowball effect of more and more taxpayer money. So now that's going into funding all kinds of priorities of the left.
And so much of this was happening through the State Department, through USAID. The Trump administration has put a huge clamp on the funds that are going towards these groups, right? But that doesn't seem to have stopped them yet. Where are we now? Under the current Trump administration, highly aware that this is going on, especially since they listen to guys like you, where are we now?
Well, there's been a number of efforts. One of the more famous ones, of course, USAID was probably the most famous. The EPA had this story of $20 billion gold bars off the Titanic. We talked about it. As far as I know, that is still in limbo. The funds have been frozen, but there are legal fights. You're going up against groups that are extremely well funded. And when
Go back for a second to the gold bars off the Titanic. So we talked about this at the time. This was the kind of the last minute funding run that the Biden administration pushed through before the Trump administration came in.
Exactly. After Donald Trump was elected last November, a year ago, Joe Biden and his administration basically put out the word that we need to dump as much cash into our friends' pockets as possible before Donald Trump takes office.
I wonder where we've heard that tactic before.
Yeah, yes, totally. So it's pretty common to spend down, but not at this scale. It was over $100 billion, more than $100 billion left after Trump's election day and before his inauguration. And even after his inauguration, it took a while to kind of get the operational control to figure out where are all these contracts and grants going. And so it's been frozen. The USAID example is probably the most successful example, but the problem that the administration faces is that when these awards have been given out and contracts have been signed, it's extremely hard to claw that money back. It's the same thing with like mass firings of federal workers, because when Congress appropriates money, that's kind of that's sacrosanct in a way. The Supreme Court would view it as such, as the the deliberative bodies have appropriated this money. Now, like
hard to take it back.
It's hard to take. The Inflation Reduction Act was the biggest heist and scam ever, and yet it was passed by Congress, and it left $300 billion just to people who said, "I'm going to fix the climate."
Right, and that money is pretty much gone. Like there's just
well, the EPA has frozen it, but it's a legal battle.
It's going to be a long, drawn-out legal battle, much like all the other things that the Trump administration is having to fight back. But the big question now is if we are catching the system, we are figuring out what the blueprint is for all of this. It's such an ingrained culture, Seamus. People are making way too much money doing this. I don't imagine they just give up and go away. They're going to recalibrate. They're going to figure out ways to keep going and keep doing what they've been doing. Have you seen signs of them recalibrating, readjusting to this new regime?
Yeah, I think the biggest sign was Bill Gates, has announced that he would be ceasing all funding to the Arabella funding network, all the Arabella funds. Now we'll see if that holds. It seems like he's doing that just now for, to cozy up with the administration. So we'll see. I believe they're going to bide their time. They're going to try to get through this administration and hope that the next one is not a Republican administration. So we'll kind of see, but it's critical that this administration cuts off, the Antifa and all of the really radical stuff, anything that's criminal that's going on, because if and when the Democrats get back in, they are going to do this twice as ruthlessly, twice as efficiently, and they really are the party, the government party. So they will be better at it.
And it will be a matter of the Democrats returning and just turning the switch back on.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That seems problematic.
Yes, yes, and they've got. Well, I'll come back on and talk about all the get out the vote and ballot harvesting money that Arabella Network and Soros and all of them have.
That's going to be also a fascinating discussion. Well, Seamus, thank you for all the good work and keep up the research. We know you guys are always following the money and it's always yielding some pretty amazing and astounding stories. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Chanel.